Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with slightly hairy Paul, the other one, Barlow. Are you big hairy or slightly hairy?
Slightly
You
hairy
are,
is fine.
you
I
are
can live with
hairy.
that. I know that I
Yeah.
don't have the beard girth that you and Chewy have, but
I
I've got what I have.
I regret the name almost every single day because it's got nothing to do with hair. It's got nothing to do with beards, but we've sort of grown into it, so to speak.
I saw a video actually today on TikTok of some dude who was talking about a picture that he had drawn and something like that, and he had this big glorious beard with his microphone plugged into it, like clipped onto it.
Oh, that was like his lapel was his beard.
It was his lapel, was the beard, and I'm just like, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing that, but unique way to do it.
Okay, whānau. So Paul is back with us tonight. I think officially Chewy is back in the country. The Chewmeister is not in the building, but in the country, in the borders. He's back from the UK. We've heard word. I believe he gets back to Dunedin tomorrow. But as we've said, HR made a very prudent decision that someone back from the UK for 3 weeks needs a couple of extra nights. So we expect to see him next Monday. When I was talking to him before he left, he said, "Oh, no, I might pop in, I might not." It's like, no, there's no pressure, no expectation. Don't anyone else expect it. Chewy will be back with us from next week. Someone who is back, though, we should actually just, because people will like this, you watch the chat already. There you go, whānau. We've got something up and running again. Oi, you awake? Hey. Oh, geez.
Oh, the eye is just like, what
there
now?
Yeah, sorry. There you go, in the chat already. I told you, whānau, there was a broken camera for a while. It's back now, so I've set it back up for tonight. We'll see how long that she's in the studio for, although I'm home by myself pretty much tonight, not quite. And she hasn't got her friends, i.e. my children, here to play with tonight. So, Paul, we all know you. I feel like we don't really, we normally do this guest host thing. We go, now, Paul, tell us about you and what you do. We know what you do. Friend of the show, basically do what we do. Paul, the other one, Barlow. And at some stage during the show tonight, I definitely want to touch into your expertise, your area of research at the moment around local body elections, and certainly the red flags, if we've got anything to talk about around that as well. I'm going to have a bit of a chat about Kash Patel tonight and his illegal gift to this government. I've got a theory, and that this government's breaking laws every day of the week. So why would Kash Patel know that they wouldn't want an illegal gift? You know, if you're going to give it to a group who are breaking laws all the time, and I've got an example of that, then why would he know anything to do with that? So we're going to have a chat about that, local body elections. Also, we might have a look, which we haven't talked about much this week, is since the Charlie Kirk shooting in America, and since the conservative American right has tried to sow a seed, which was the violence on the left, and since that happened and I put out a tweet that said, out of interest, what happens to the current conversation around Charlie Kirk and shooters when the next 3 examples of political violence in the US are committed by people on the right? Where does the conversation go then? Yeah, we might have some follow-up to that tonight. Not necessarily a massive focus on it, but, last weekend, 6 mass shootings in the States. Yeah, so just another weekend. So all of that and more going on as well. Now, we're about to get Debbie Ngarewa-Packer into the studio. So I will remember to say it to you right now. Happy to take your chats and super chats. Doing a super chat, no matter how much it is, does not guarantee your question or comment will get asked while Debbie is here. You could test us. You could do like $100 one and see if we would stick by that. But just letting you know, there's no guarantee. I don't want to leave anyone hanging like they think that's there. So we're just putting that in. Most of the time we get to most chats and that kind of stuff that are pertinent, but just being really clear with you. On Saturday, New Zealand time, we had the speech from Mr. Peters from the UN saying that New Zealand was not yet ready to recognise the statehood of Gaza. On Saturday, we were lucky enough to have Marama Davidson with us live quite soon after the announcement. On Monday night, we had Leader of the Opposition, Chippy, Christopher Hipkins, join us. And what I wanted to do was to be able to give the opposition the opportunity to respond. And so this is the reason we've tried to get 3 of the leaders on. And tonight we want to welcome to the show a very special welcome to someone we would never forget to leave in the waiting room from Te Pāti Māori. It is Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Korua.
Just to explain the joke, you said to us before we came on, please don't forget me like Watia did.
Yeah. That's exactly
How
what
long
I
do they?
said.
How long do they forget you for, out of interest?
The whole show. The whole show.
my
I'm
God.
just unforgettable. Yeah. And
Oh my
then sort of
gosh.
rang up a couple of days. Hey, do you want to be on our show? And I'm like, is this like
I'm
another
still on.
trick
You should
question?
have said 2 days later. I'm still on hold on the other line. I'm still waiting. That's what you should have
Hey, I
said.
noticed you guys have got props behind you. My nephew just launched his book yesterday, so sorry, I've got to jump on the bandwagon, and it's
Bring it up.
Absolutely.
Bring it up. Bring it closer. Show it to us. Let us see it.
Thank you.
Look, we'll even do this. Say there. We'll even do this. There we go. The Last Living Cannibal.
Yeah,
What's it about?
Yeah, what's it about?
it's actually, he's grasped our history in Taranaki around Tito Kuwaru era and made it into a novel around a character in 1940 who's crafted off actually our dad and our kukos, and we can see ourselves in
nice.
parts of the book. He's brilliant. His third book in 3 years. So thank you for letting me do that.
No, absolutely. The
Auntie really wants him.
yeah, the bills in the mail. We
It's like
charge. We
claim to
got we have a very high rate for our advertising here, Deb. So the bill will be in the mail.
Yeah, no, he's my claim to fame.
Slightly cheaper than the
Thank you for
platform for
inviting
the
me.
weather
because,
forecast.
Sorry, what was that, Paul?
I said the rate here for advertising is slightly cheaper than the platform for the weather forecast.
How would you know what the
I know, and I know that they had a payout the other day to a judge, which I find kind of hilarious for something they said on the air. So there you go. Let's do this, right? Let's do this. We did this with Chippy, but just to get everyone on the same page, let us play 90 seconds, the last 90 seconds. As I said to Chippy on Monday night, there was like 14 minutes of filler and justification, and then there was like 90 seconds of all that really, when I say mattered, meaning the only substance, the only thing people were waiting for was the last 90 seconds. Let's just have a look at it quickly together, just so we know where we're at with the Winston Peters / New Zealand government / officially, unfortunately, on the world scene, New Zealand position when it comes to the recognition of the statehood of Palestine.
And then, like over 150 countries before it, New Zealand's recognition of Palestinian statehood now would serve as little more than an existential act of defiance against an unalterable state of affairs. We are not ready to make that gesture. Rather, the New Zealand government believes that it has one opportunity to recognise
I
Palestine.
did kind of hope he was going to go into an Eminem bar there. Just one shot. When you've only got one shot, that's what I was hoping.
Palestinian statehood, and it would make better sense to do so when conditions offer greater prospects for peace and negotiation than at present. With a war raging, Hamas still in place, and no clarity on next steps, we do not think that time is now.
So there you go, Deb. It's pretty cut and dry what they're saying and what they want to put out there. So you can just response. The response is yours. You can have the talking stick for whatever you want.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you. I mean, first of all, he said it in his very first, 10, 15 seconds, the gesture. This was always going to be about the gesture. And, what we have is the government has, and it's completely seen this as a gesture, having a state as some sort of dry diplomatic act. And it's actually deeply symbolic. It's deeply part of acknowledging a state which includes humanity, dignity, the right for a people to exist on equal footing with everyone else. And I think this government, and we're not surprised, but hugely disappointed and grossly embarrassed by the fact that, he separates state recognition, and this whole action does, this whole gesture does, from human recognition. And I think that's what we all wanted. For Māori, and other Indigenous people, this just hugely resonates, because the recognition of Tino Rangatiratanga isn't just about borders, geographics. It's actually about affirming mana and affirming the existence and the humanity of a people. And colonization has taught us that when you deny sovereignty, it's actually to deny humanity. And that's what we all witnessed. And I think if anyone else wants to say it any different, is that we have a government that when a people was at its absolute lowest and the most desperate humans can ever be, in an international community, this twat of a minister and an absolute gross idiots of a government have decided that self-determination, the recognition of these humans of Palestine as humans don't exist. That's what we all witnessed.
A little side note about the word twat. Obviously, we would agree with you, but coming from a politician, I'm interested as well because, in fact, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit, Deb. I was texting with Deb on Sunday, and she said, "Oh, hopefully I'll have got over all my swearing by then." And I texted back, "No, you can come and swear on our show. That's fine."
It's the internet. You're allowed to swear.
You and Marama at the last election at the leaders' debate were kind of treating Winston quite nice. Matua, high-fiving each other. It was. I'm not saying it wasn't combative because you were trying to win, but it was friendly. Do you feel at all different around him now because of this, or is it just that's Winston being Winston?
I mean, first of all, when you're we were being smart, to be honest. Just even calling him Matua was not done in a respectful way. It was done in he's a ko-matua. And I think it was more about recognizing the fact that, as women, we were having this matua in the room. So, yeah, I don't know if it was respectful. I certainly wasn't feeling it towards him based on some of their policy cordial. But I think the question of do I see him the same as what we saw beforehand? I see anyone that has used their sphere of influence to show and continuously show this immoral consistency or moral consistency. I absolutely see them low, about as low as I see Shane Jones trying to mine our seabed. And I think, that's, I can't unsee that. I can't unhear what went down in front of the world. Everyone else gets out when the Israel Prime Minister, whose name I refuse to say, stands up. And I was just sitting there like this, like, I'm up next. His whole language, the tone of his language is like he's sitting at the races. These I felt like I was watching the, what's that dude, the emperor with no clothes on? And he's just trying to, overstate his comment, overstate his presence, overstate. I'm just like, Matua, you're in front of the whole world, and you just took the moral level, the moral compass of Aotearoa down the lowest we could ever be. You are a country made up of your own Indigenous people in tangata whenua. We are a nation that has shown, a very young nation, what it was like to have colonization, to actually have our own people not recognized, to actually have people saying, we will snuff them out and all these sorts of things. It's just like, and here you are refusing to acknowledge those lessons when applying them to somebody else. So I think there's dignity in international law that we just dropped. The bar just dropped lower than low.
Two little things, and I'll throw to Paul. First, as a comment, I also liked how, I think it was John J. Campbell said to the Prime Minister on Monday morning, by going by your rationale, Ukraine doesn't fit in with the criteria for recognising statehood. So are we going to de-recognise Ukraine, which I thought was a brilliant point. But the other thing I wanted to know, and you've kind of just touched on it, being Māori, being tangata whenua, do you think this hits harder? And are you more impacted by this than some blimmin' rodeo clown like me who kind of sees the world in a different way?
I think, we're all descendants of the Tiriti here in Aotearoa. Me as tangata whenua, you as tangata Tiriti. I think we all are intertwined in the trauma of colonization. Sure, my ancestors felt it and lost everything, but we're actually all part of the de-traumatizing and trying to make this country the best it can bloody be. Having learnt those experiences, your role to de-traumatize and to not repeat that as one nation onto another is just as important as my feels. And so I think I don't want to assume that my pain is any less than another person who's a mama who's watching the babies, or who's a husband watching the wife. I think, humanity for all of us, and seeing it, the degradation of it, as we're seeing now, is really important for all of us. But what I will say is, as a survivor of colonization, and and the Taranaki Tribunal report has said, survivors of Holocaust, I absolutely empathize with the fact that we have the opportunity to help alleviate and add to those who are fighting against settlers and the settler colonial mentality. And it's not a war. I mean, it's disproportionately not a war. I get so annoyed when I hear people say, "Oh, we'll let the Hamas hostages go." Okay, absolutely. 22 versus 11, 12,000 that are detained, that are held without any trial. Like, that's just the disproportionate killing and murdering, and the way that things are going are just absolutely something that this country should have understood. And so it's really, really hard when Winston's taken a stance that reflects that traditional Westernized caution and colonization, to actually see him any different. And I think for many of us in international law and global practice, that we need to be more humane in conflict. And I think, the conditions, I think he put about 6 reasons why, what was the word he used? The viable reasons that we can't support them. There really is a precondition for peace is actually to remember what we had come from. And I think a precondition for peace is to see everyone equally as humans.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
very
what-
true. Yeah. Paul, jump in, sir.
So I'm kind of curious about a couple of comments that people have flicked me on the topic, going, one of the reasons that Winston can't stand up in front of the United Nations and say, look, this is horrible, and we see the Palestinians as a country and give them statehood, is because it would mean he would need to acknowledge colonization itself, which is something that this government is not particularly good at doing. I'm really curious to get your perspective on that kind of parallel between, what we're doing on the world stage as a country versus what they're doing on a national stage as the coalition in charge of making all the decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's thanks, Paul. I think that's actually what it comes down to, is that why would a government, and I've seen lots of comments because I put out a pretty hearty video, and I never make apologies. It's my platform. It's actually how I connect and express myself. And one of the things I had come back is that, why did we expect him to be, and this government to be, any more humane when they deny inequities, which comes about because of colonization? They've done everything they can do to end the peace here between us in race relations and rights and interests. And I think, I guess you just hope that we're going to behave better away from home. You just hope that how cruel you are at home is going to be dropped, when other people are there, being ruthlessly slaughtered and displaced and, deliberately starved. And, I guess that's probably the real pit in my puku, is that there was just no way that we were going to be able to see any resolve and a position for Aotearoa to have at least hold our heads with a little bit of pride that you may get it wrong at home, but surely you're going to get it right for others. So, and I think it's that right wing, the whole Atlas, I don't say this enough, the way that everything's been grabbed, the reliance on the media, the reliance on America, the reliance on the relationship, security relationship, the whole FBI coming into Wellington. It just mirrors, sadly, that we are just another state of the US, which is just another state of Israel. And let's just call it what it is. This government has defaulted our mana, our tino rangatiratanga, our identity, and that's what we saw play out on Saturday. I have no hope for this government, which is why it's got to be one term, whānau, one term. Seriously, it's got to be one term. We're all going to have cracks. We're a party with growing pains, everyone, but we've all got to do everything we can do to make this a one-term government, and you've got to trust in those that have a heart for our country, because I don't believe I mean, so when I put my post up, we got bots galore, and it's just hilarious because they only bot on Facebook because that's only the age group only know how to go on Facebook. They don't bot on all the others. But I guess what it showed us is that they actually have to engineer a system and pay a system to take us all on. When you believe in something, you let it speak for itself. But they actually had to bot it all out. So yeah, I just think there's only one way out of the situation, which is I'm really glad to the Greens and us have always been really staunch about the sanctions, been really staunch about what it is that we need to do. Get that Israel ambassador out of here, get the US nonsense out of here, get rid of Judith Collins. But what we need to do seriously is leave no doubt that this government cannot ever be in again. None of them, neither of the three. They've just got to go.
How do we then get to a point, because you might be able to bring this up on screen, Pat. I think Gold put up the number of maximum days until the next elections. That's around 400.
This is just so people know. This is every night. Every night, Citizen does this. He has the countdown for us. The very most it's going to be, I mean, they may call it earlier, is 444 days, says Citizen Gold. So in other words, there's that last date it has to be by. That last date is 444 days. A lot of damage can happen in 444 days, Deb.
Yeah.
444 days.
That's till the last possible date. The last possible date.
At the most. And then we have the election itself, and, it takes about 20 days to get the results in for that. And then the government gets formed, and, God willing, it's not the lot that we've got at the moment. But that's still looking at a long time before we'll have a government in place that can actually sit there and make those sanctions and can make those moves to get rid of the ambassadors. And a lot of damage can be done in that time overseas, in Gaza itself. How do we as a country, as people, sit there and go, put pressure on the coalition at the moment to change things, to try and make a difference in the lives of people who are being impacted by this before that really long process works its way through?
Yeah, I think, and it's been really interesting because I'm going to tell you this. I don't think national supporters support this government stance. And the reason I say that is because everywhere we go, I'm not hearing, hey, I'm hearing, I used to vote national. I will never vote national again. I helped get this government in. I did not expect them to get in with ACT or with New Zealand First. I did not know.
Look at the polls. Just look at the polls, Deb. The polls will tell you that part of a huge section of their support have gone elsewhere. The thing is, where will they go next year? That's the question.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the first thing that we have to do is just remember that this is a humanity crisis, and the solutions for us and what we need to do is about all those connections, not just in here, outside of here. That's how, remember when New Zealand, I think it might have been national, sat with apartheid. And I think this is what we should be doing, is that we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can alongside other allies. We just have to. We have to be able to support and fight for the protection of, for example, what we see going on with the flotilla. I don't think, everything's got to come from within us to stop what's going on with our government. I think the way that we're doing this is that we have to be continuously aware and alert of what it is that we do to help this. And I think that is, again, the power of the people. I want to give you all the solutions, but the way that we've seen this humanitarian crisis and this open-air prison is about the way that we look after each other, the way that we continue to have and support those who put themselves on the front line, the way that we continue to bring about pressure on those who are either standing in local government, regional government, as we're doing at the moment. They've all been questioned. And I think the way that we continuously bring shame and highlight the way that this government's doing. But it is really frightening. There's only 6 more people that we need to support Chloe's sanction bill. Just 6 more politicians. That's all we need. And I think those have to be looked at, not just inside the House, but the wider context of what we do in a humanitarian ally situation. And it's not going to happen from in Parliament, but seriously, not while we've been run by a whole bunch of Zionists. It's just not. And I think you guys are really important and part of that picture, people like yourselves.
Thank you for that. I mentioned this the other night, and what you're talking about and getting involved, is the quote that I mention every now and again that Chloe said at Waitangi, which is, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. So get involved or else get run over. And whether it's internationally, like we're looking at right now, the flotilla live heading towards Gaza, or whether it's your local body election, which we're going to talk to Paul about a bit later in the show. If you don't do politics, politics will do you.
Paul and the mess that they're doing there. I spoke to Rana and Samuel, and I mean, he's 18 and a half. These are our ones from Aotearoa, and he's 18 and a half. We did karakia, and they've been singing Te Aroha and things like that. And I just kept thinking, look, you mess of a people that are ruining our nation and our whanaungatanga with each other. Our babies are out here cleaning up your mess and doing everything they can. And I'm so proud and also so worried and what it is that's going on there at the moment. But I think it's just really important that we continuously think and rethink and come together for what it is that we do next. That's what I've seen been going on in the entire time that we've had to have this layer of the battle in freeing Palestine. It's just amazing commitment, and it's so sad. Now, I think it's been great. Lately we've heard Labour come really strong out, and I think we needed to have that. And I think, again, the left bloc are really consolidating and getting strong on that messaging of what it is that we will do. And I think we have to be really clear. We've got to get in. It's the only way we're going to end this. And I wish I'd have a snap election and make it earlier, because we just come out of a by-election. No, not really.
Next year is going to be both fascinating to observe and incredibly important to get involved in for the whole year. I think we're thinking about kind of starting again at Waitangi is probably the plan at the moment, and that's probably going to be the kickoff for us, I think. Well, we'll see. Not quite there yet, but we're just trying to organise some things. Paul, I sent you a text. Did you get that text? Just in case you didn't see it?
Just now?
Yeah, just read the text. It's a message from me to you. A little quick question about the Winston Peters thing as well. He didn't seem to be really completely corpus mentis when he was delivering that speech. I don't want to, I'm not trying to talk about, I'm not being ageist, but over 150 countries before it. Who says 150? 150? I mean, how's Winston going when it comes to, being, I'm actually asking a genuine question. I'm not trying to take the piss, but not being as sharp as he was.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we've noticed, and I think that's sort of why we saw old J.R. Shane Jones be made the deputy, is because he is no longer doing those long speeches. I don't know if you've had a look, but when he hasn't done a 10-minute speech for quite some time. He's still very witty because we sit right beside him now. Oh, the dynamics are just wonderful. And to be really honest, there's a lot to learn from his style. He's so quick when it comes to the point of orders and so quick, but still extremely witty. But if you really watch him, he's not doing the long things. He's and I guess he's the same age as my dad. So my papa's stopped being. He doesn't do pai stuff now like he used to. So but still extremely sharp. But I guess too, I'm going to try and say this as respectful as I can. You feel like you're debating and hearing from someone who was born a long time ago and who was born in an era where there's been lots of change. And you feel that sometimes I've got aunties who are 70s and 80s and they live in households with 2 or 3 generations and they're still really upbeat and they're still because I think those rangatahi keep them going, and their conversation, the whole way they view their tolerance for rangatahi, and actually the acceptance of their mokopuna is really beautiful. You feel like you have a person that is has been born 80 plus years ago and not really been in company that's grown or challenged him. He's been the top of his game. He commands that top, but he doesn't have a whole bunch of rangatahi or kids bowling into his house. He takes to kura that he goes out on wānanga with. The hunters that just grow us all the time. You just get a sense that sadly, he hasn't grown past this certain era. And I guess that's what I see. So you see the bigotry, you see the discrimination, the revolting anti-trans, the stuff, because again, he represents an era, and he's not been tested or challenged in real life by 100 mokos and rangatahi at a kura or kohanga bowling in on his office. He's commanded a presence in a state, and he's a statesman that has been very sterile. It hasn't had his whole environment's been very manicured and very set, and that's what you feel like you're around.
Yeah, he's always sat in the big chair for the last 30 or 40 years. He's always been in the big chair.
Yeah, and that's an honor. He's worked really hard. I'm certainly not putting that down. Just I think, I can have a conversation, for example, with my Auntie Bib, who lives with her granddaughter and her great grandchildren, who has a daughter coming in and out, who goes to Pātea Māori Club with us, who's and she's just upbeat. Her whole, language, she knows what's going on with everybody. So her whole depth of understanding and humanity, her empathy, her kindness is just different. Her tolerance for things is just, and I think that's exactly why we need to have mechanisms and support to help bring other thinking into that place, because it's a dangerous place if you've always been in the big seat and you don't have anyone else around you. You're untouchable, and and that's not a cool way to be governed.
I actually think if you've got a sec, Deb, because Paul is pretty onto it with the local body stuff, maybe you and him could have a chat about Māori wards, because I'd be interested to hear that. But before you do that, just to respond to what you've said, it's that idea of, if you want to have like a healthy progression in life, if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to find another room. You know what I mean? And then if you're the smartest person in that room, it's really healthy to find another room so you can learn and grow and that sort of thing. But Paul, I
have a view. We learn until the day we pass, and then continue. And I think, I guess it's just how static your mind is and your growth. So you can be really great at something if that's all you're in, but I want to be great at lots of things. So anyway.
So if that's okay, Paul, I'd like to throw you the ball and see if you've got we won't keep Deb for too much longer because she's given us a lot of time already, which is lovely. But if you've got a question or something around the local body, this would be a great time.
Yeah, well, first of all, have you voted yet?
No.
Oh, Paul.
And actually,
Paul.
No. I've got my orange envelopes over there, and they're actually waiting for me. And I'm going to tell you why I haven't voted. I'm not making excuses, but so they want me to do a video of when I vote. And then I've got to do this, and I've got to do this reel, and I've got to do all these things. I think, why can't I just go and chuck it in? So it's, it's a bit of that. And so tomorrow there's a bit of a reel being made that Fire Deb's voted. And it's really embarrassing because my daughter's standing here for local community board. And she's like, Mum, have you voted for me yet? Mum, have you voted for me yet? I'm thinking, okay. So my staff are back to do the reel, the video tomorrow. So that's why. Geez, that was
Perfect.
that was a really long. You really caught me out, Paul.
Well, see, for me,
voted?
that's a really big thing, though, because it is because it's a postal ballot election. It's old-fashioned. The system doesn't work anymore. It needs to be upgraded, and a lot of people are in the same boat. I'm going to get to it at some stage. And to be fair, my voting forms are also sitting on the table because I've been doing the research on Tamaki and going.
Me too.
Yeah, so I'm as guilty of it as everybody else in this conversation. But I want to just sort of remember and remind people that, first of all, you can still vote. You've got a week to be able to get things into the post for it to get back to be counted.
7th of October.
Māori wards, 7 days for the postal service, but you can do drop-offs and stuff like that right up until lunchtime on the 11th. When it comes to Māori wards, I sat through and watched the select committee process on this. It was overwhelmingly against doing what the government has done and forcing this referendum onto councils. The people that I've spoken to on councils are livid because, this is an extra expense. This isn't something that they felt they needed to do. There seems to be no mandate for it. And now they're up against places like Hobson's Pledge doing the whole stealing people's images and going anti-Māori wards. You've got people who are running in these wards who are really specifically having to battle against, please give me a job. Also, please make sure I've still got a job next election to run for, because that seems to be falling on them. I'm really curious to get your perspective as the leader of Te Pāti Māori about the whole thing, to be honest, because it feels like a mess, like it's been rushed through to me.
Yeah, I think thanks for that. At least I can answer that question. So what I have seen, and we've been really complaining in my electorate, there are 3 that haven't been included, 1 in Taitonga, Opotiki, and around in Ikaro Rāwhiti. Anyway, long story short, the whole process of having physical, pamphlets and having to drop them in has meant that you're extremely reliant on everything getting into those booklets and pamphlets or voting forms. And in Māori wards, for example, we've had a whole lot of the Māori ward councillors be missed out. Some of them who were successful in Nelson and Manawatu have been missed out. But the problem is that they're needed to be in there so that those who are doing the referendum, because they remember that's what's on at the moment, are able to see, oh, there are these people in these seats, and oh, I know that person, so therefore they may actually support a referendum. And what we've seen, and I've put in tons of, we had questions in the House to the ministers, I've put in tons of written questions, and actually Ken Mea last night and a group of our electorate issued and have put in the district high court in Wanganui papers to actually say there should be an injunction to stop this referendum. If people are missing, it's actually not a valid process. Something's wrong, and they should be reviewing it before they go and do any more. And I think those are some of the things that we're seeing are going to make this process flawed. They've made it difficult for people to be able to understand. And I think there's a real apathy before some of those electorates that actually those wards that aren't even voting, because it's, it should be electronic, for goodness sake. But even then, there's an assumption that people can go in during working hours, or that they have fuel to go in. And some councils have been absolutely dynamic and doing all sorts of weird dances and TikTok things to try and get the the voting rate up. But a lot have done nothing. So I think the inconsistencies, government put the referendum on the regions, on the councils, and it's been up to them on top of running a process with a minimal budget to sort of try and make it work. Something as important as our referendum for Māori wards should have had a hell of a lot more investment. There should have been a hell of a lot more promotion at a national level coming out of central government. And I feel real aroha for those candidates who are not only just going out to try and say, vote me, they have to also sell and make it understandable and relatable to their community what Māori wards are, and deal with the referendum. It's been a really atrocious process, and it's been manakied and looked after with a lot of great candidates' goodwill, with a lot of iwi, with a lot of amazing tangata tiriti who are supporting the wards and the way that they've gotten all out there. Andrew Judd's been championing some massive movement to counteract the slobs and plodgers. But I think those are things that shouldn't have to happen. There should be equity and equality applied in anything that is so important to us as a nation, and it's just been an absolute train wreck. So yeah. I just see a comment here. Got your tan this week. Yeah, that's really interesting that you guys believe. It's like, leave me alone. I may be white, but I'm not. It's just like, and I think that's what we're sort of seeing, is this attitude that people are getting more. They're taking something away from something, and so then we get a bit nasty and start to dig in, and I guess try to find spots that make people be more divisive and look at why you would want that. The reality that I can see is, why would you not want your iwi or Māori at the council table, bringing about their expertise, the fact that they're a lot more successful than non-Māori economically, the fact that their perpetual funds are outperformed council perpetual funds, the fact that they have a younger generation, therefore a lot more of those coming through to sort of stay at home and work and invest and buy in I guess invest in their own people and buy into the commitment needs to sort of take people for sports, care for the elderly. I just think, why would you not want a richer council. But yeah, that's just sort of, I guess, the hard work that I see Paul going on in the Māori ward space, and it's been tough. And I'm really supportive of what Ken Mayer and them have done with issuing that paper, because I actually agree there should be an injunction. If 4 or 5 councils and more have actually stuffed up the process, it should be stopped.
See, one of the things that really annoyed me, I was watching a Meet the Candidates event in Palmy, and they've got a young councillor there. I think his name is William Wood. Young Nat, speaks very well, very passionate about what he does, from a farming rural community. And he was asked about Māori wards, and his response was, I love the Māori wards. I love the people that we're dealing with. They bring in so much expertise. They have different connections, different ways the community. I absolutely see the value of them. I'm not voting for them though, because reasons.
Why?
And it's so frustrating to see that kind of like rigid camp that they feel that they have to be in sometimes, because it's just not something that they feel they should vote for. It just
it's bizarre. You know, at maiden speech, every MP did a mihi. Nearly every MP, new MP, did a mihi. But when it came to the reo, when it came to Māori wards, when it came to actually giving, Wairua giving substance to that Māori language that they used in their maiden speech, doesn't apply. It's just, and I think Hannah has a really good saying, like Māori are globally hot, locally not. I keep repeating it because I think this government has really brought that to life. But we just got to keep harmonising and keep focused on the strength of unity and what it is that we can do together. And it's not easy, and I think that's what they sort of count on. Like we kept sort of saying, and we saw this during the by-election with Orene, is that our people have had all of our people, by the way, have the submissions out, the select committee out, they are activation out. They have had to sit there and I mean, whoever thought we'd have to be fighting for Māori, for disabled, for woman equity, for our reo, for our land, for our taiao, and whoever thought that we would have to have so many battles going on. So then when it's come into the Māori wards, as that sort of eases into the end of a very long, hard year. I mean, if we lost an MP, we had the longest bloody suspension. Everyone goes, "Oh, you guys got issues into Pāti Māori." I think you think like who hasn't? And I think this is what we've got to be okay about saying, is that not every community is up to mobilising for another thing when they've had to mobilise and deal with so much else on the ground, including surviving. So we just have to keep going, and I think it's about another 7-8 days to try and push everyone to vote, and us three get our bloody envelopes in.
Hey Deb, you've been far more generous than you needed to be with your time. We appreciate you jumping in. Are you okay for one question from the chat?
Yeah, of course.
There's actually 2. The first is just a comment from Spiderhoof. Spiderhoof just wanted to say, kia ora Deb, as always, love you mahi and korero, and can't wait to support you in Te Pāti Māori for your 2026 win. So that was just a message. But Tiffany's got a question. Tiffany says, Debbie, I whakapapa to whenua kura. I want to know what Te Pāti Māori will do if the moderates of Labour kowtow to Luxon and go bipartisan on exploration off our whenua. Surely a coalition would be a mate nei? Mate nei, that means sick, doesn't it? Or dead? Am I right? Yeah, so a coalition wouldn't work.
Tēnā koe whanaunga. I'd say Ngā Rauru is your iwi, and possibly Whenua Kura Waiaturi your hapu. Whenua Kura, actually, his marae are one of the staunchest that have been opposed to seabed mining, still have their billboard up as you drive past. I think the question is what would we do if Chippy goes into the whole exploration space with Luxon? Is that what the question was?
Yeah. So if they walked across the aisle and supported it to, I can't imagine they'd do that, but if they did.
Yeah, it's really hard to know. I mean, this is what I know we would do. And I know our whole thinking for next year is the significance, and I get that people are spooked out by us. The significance of the Greens and Te Pāti Māori working together is that we are the only two that oppose seabed mining. We are the only two that have been really open about our views on exploration and our views on renewable energy and our views on renewable energy that's owned by community, that's equitable for whole communities. And I think, some of these things are things that would be big bottom lines for us. They are, and we must move away from this extractive energy. I like you, when I live in Taranaki, and one of the best things that Jacinda did when she was in government is actually bring an end to new permits. It's a finite source. It's going to freaking end. And I don't care what Shane Jones says when he goes, mining, it's going to end. What we should have been doing years ago is investing in what the alternative energy supply, an equitable energy supply would look like and where it would come from. So those are things that we want to shout from the top of the hills and insist. I think that's why Labour needs to have the likes of us, because we're probably collectively more left than the left. But again, it is about having everything lined up, and there were opportunities to do that. This government has taken us back, and some of the repeal that we would want to do in the first 100 days is actually exactly that, and being able to identify where it is that our iwi and our communities have said, don't do this. Our courts also off Whenua Kura, just so you're aware, Korua, is unprecedented wins that have happened in the Supreme Court to actually agree with us that nothing should be off that coast. So that's what we would bring back to life. And I've actually got a bill drafted to ban seabed mining. And I was disappointed when Labour didn't support my member's bill. I've always said that to Chippy. And I think that's why they need us, us and Te Pāti Kakariki in government with them, so that we can push them up and out.
Hey, thanks, Debbie. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you. Appreciate your thoughts. Appreciate your views. Should we just have one more quick look at the flotilla before you take off to make sure we know that they're still? They're still. I can't see any kind of GPS or anything on it, but they're still floating. I don't mean to sound, that's not a flippant thing to say. I'm like, it's good. They're still floating. So this is a live shot. And if people want to check this out, just go to YouTube.
It's the closest I've ever gotten. Is that what you guys think?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but it's on YouTube right now. Live global Sunburn flotilla nears high risk zone off Gaza coast. So, Debbie, thank you for joining us tonight. All the best, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Will you kick me out, because I don't know how to get out?
I'll kick you out. See you, bye. Boom.
Yeah.
Kicked. I say straight away an apology to the chats we didn't get to, but I've said it at the start. Paul, this would be a time for reflection. Would you like to share anything from the conversation you just heard? Anything you'd like to?
This is my first ever long-form chat with Debbie. I've had a couple of messages on social, so this was actually something really interesting for me, because she has such a unique perspective that she brings in. She's in such a unique position in Parliament that it's always really cool to hear what her views are and what she brings to the table. And she's absolutely spot on about Winnie. He is always going to go down in history as a statesman for this country. He has done a lot of work as an MP, and nobody can take that away from him.
Yep.
But there's a point where you need to sit there and go, you know what, I'm in my 80s. I want to go and sit back on the deck and go fishing and leave everything else to everyone else. And that doesn't seem to be something he's very good at. And you can see him fading and losing his energy as he goes. But I also think he gets a bit frustrated in the position at the moment, because he's contending with David a lot of the time for that attention space. We actually saw really early in the coalition that you'd have, Winston would do something outrageous, David would do something outrageous, and they'd be fighting week on week to get those headlines. So it's disappointing what we saw in the UN, but when you sit down and you see how Winston delivered it, that was an extra different level of disappointing for me.
Yeah. Very quickly, I want to address some things going on in the chat, so people know what's going on. I'm not sure whether anyone's been zapped tonight, but always when we have a high-profile left-leaning political figure on, we get the crunchies. Normally what happens for people who complain about my truth is not being able to get through, it's the YouTube moderation that stops those comments, usually. I mean, there may be a moderator in the chat right now that stops some stuff, but normally, I almost say 19 times out of 20, It's the YouTube moderation. So if you've got a problem with it, go talk to YouTube. Like so, it's automated.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Just another little pickup for people because, I know people have missed her. Look at that big lawn. Yeah, got there. All right. So let's get to these super chats. Again, I do apologize. Some of them are for Debbie. We didn't promise and didn't get to all the time in the world. Tiffany again, sorry. Cash Dope Money Patel. Kiwi Bird Winston's not ready. He forgot to pack his backbone. Tiffany, mate, you've gone crazy in this tonight. I mean, appreciate the super chats. Settler colonials will never call out settler colonials. That would require self-reflection, and we all know they are incapable of that. Rajan says to Debbie, what are the chances of an election deal with the Greens to maximise both parties' seat count? As a Green Party member, I'd fully support it. Yeah, Bomber brought this up the other day. Someone in the Te Pāti Māori about not running for the party vote in the Māori seats and the possibility of having a kind of 5 to 7 seat hangover, which would be basically impossible to beat. If that's what Rajan's talking about, I'm not sure, but that was one of the ideas that was floated. Another one from Tiffany, it's the Donald Streisand effect. I voted for him, sure, but he was only meant to fuck with the Paws and the Browns. Yeah, absolutely. Arvids just says kia ora to Debbie. David says, another important question for Paul Barlow. Here we go. Oh, we did this last time, didn't we? Who would win in a fight between Scarlet Witch and Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Well, Willow was my generation, Willow was everybody's kind of crush. So, yeah.
I would put Scarlet Witch down as the winner, though, because at full power, Scarlet Witch is unbelievable. If you've watched Marvel Zombies that came out last week, the Dead Queen is fearsome as a character with all of the full powers of the Scarlet Witch.
What if Willow had a crossover and she had her flute at the same time? She had a crossover with American Pie and, two characters. Would it make any difference?
It would be a hell of a mashup.
Yeah, there we go. And finally, Tiffany, again, mate. Thanks for that, Pat. It was good to hear the cousin speak. Yep, all good. Now, we normally do this at the start of the show, but you'll appreciate we had a guest on, so we didn't do it. Paul, can you show us your cup? I noticed you're drinking from a Paul Barlow cup. Is that right?
And knocking over the coaster. Yeah.
Paul, the other one. I'm sure if Kiwi Skirt's got some time, she'll put the link to your store in the chat. But just so you know, Whānau, in the next wee while, this is images sent to me from our manufacturer. There's one. There's two.
Oh, I like that one.
You like that one? Lots of people saying they might. Lots of people say they might buy that one and take it to work with them, and leave it there at work. So that's an interesting one. There's that one. There's the OG. And we are getting a chewy fufu on orange that hasn't been manufactured yet. And I think when I come back, and live in China, they're going into a public holiday. Public holiday is from the 1st to the 8th of October. How dope does that sound?
That sounds amazing.
So basically, all of the production stops for a week. And they said that they're going to get these out, the whole order, and we've got hundreds coming because the minimum order is 100 per cup. Per mug. They're coming on the 10th of October. They take 45 days to get here. So we should be seeing them in the second half of November, like we said. And then in time for Chrissy.
It sounds like a great Christmas present.
Yeah. And speaking of Chrissy, we have chosen to leave up our You Can't Bomb the Truth Away. We did this as a bit of a limited run. It's been incredibly popular. So we've decided to leave it up. And we're going to continue to fundraise for medical aid for Palestinians, maps.org.uk. It's a UK-based charity that sends doctors, nurses, and medical professionals into Gaza and the surrounding areas to care for victims of war, victims of terror, victims of war crimes. So for every hoodie that gets sold, we donate $10. For every t-shirt that gets sold, we donate $5. And if you have made an order, it has been packed. I'm looking at the pile of packages. They will be going to the courier tomorrow. So basically, everyone. That's what she's guarding. She's headless at the moment. I'm not sure why. Everyone who's made an order to date, unless I've missed one because I'm a moron. All of them will be on the courier tomorrow. Of course, you can also check out the regular store stuff there as well. There's the chewy fufu. So there's an orange mug coming, Paul, with the chewy fufu. It's orange and chewy.
That's going to be brilliant as well.
Yep. So you can go check all that stuff out. We've got some more ideas and more T-shirts coming. We've got some Craig Rennie T-shirts coming. It's going to be huge. It's going to be hubba huge, Whānau. Hubba huge.
When you started all this, did you ever sit there going, I'm going to have my face on a T-shirt and a mug?
No. That's weird, bro.
Yeah.
It's weird. And like when we're at Waitangi, occasionally you do see them around. I mean, we're comparatively speaking, we're still quite small. But, they were floating around Waitangi when we were up there, and it's weird seeing someone walking with your face back towards you. It's a strange thing. Of course, the other thing that people are waiting for, and will we do this before Christmas? I think we probably will do this for Christmas. I'm now padding because I'm trying to find the image. Is that we have official imagery of the dogs as well. So we are going to have, Chewy's dog is Ilva. Oh, is that it? Oh, there we go. Found it. Look at me, eh? Just like I bought one. Oh, come on, open up now. Chewy's dog is Ilva. My dog is Nala. And we are going to be having merch with the dogs as well. So that's probably going to be coming out by Christmas time. And we might do like a BHN with the dogs. I think Emily's got a cat. Maybe we should get Emily's cat in there as well. And my dog's head up here. It's because, as you can see, she's lost her head down on the imagery. I'm not sure why, but
that's where it's gone.
Yeah, look, I don't want to spend too much time on the merchy type stuff, but just to let you guys know, if you've ordered merch, unless it's been ordered like in the last couple of hours, it's packed. It's got stickers on it. It's ready to go tomorrow. And we will keep doing that donation to MAPS for the You Can't Bomb the Truth Away tops. We will cut off the donation at some stage, and it probably will remain in the store permanently. But for now, if you want to get on board and make sure that part of your purchase goes as a donation, it's a good time to pick one up. Right, Paul. Debs is great, eh?
Yeah.
Really great.
Absolutely.
Question for the whānau. I've got to get rid of the dog now because we're talking about business. When we talk about business, it's business time. When it's business time, there's no dogs. Is this the only photo New Zealand has of Kash Patel? Like, is this the only photo? Because you go to One News and the story tonight, it's the same photo. You go to the actual news
from the Associated Press.
There's the news item, and the background is the same photo. Let's have a look at the story. It's very quick. It's only about 60 seconds as to what's happened with Kash Patel. Remember, one of the leading lawmakers, not lawmakers, but law enforcers, one of the people at the pointy end of making sure people don't break the law in America.
It's been revealed the FBI director gifted Kiwi officials 3D printed guns, which are illegal to possess here. Kash Patel was in the country in July to open the FBI's first standalone office in New Zealand. Police Commissioner Richard Chambers says he and other officials were given inoperable plastic 3D printed replica pistols. But analysis from the Firearms Safety Authority and Police Armoury found that modifications could have made the guns operational. They've now been destroyed.
So the leader of the FBI, the director of the FBI, came to New Zealand, a place, especially with handguns, that is pretty much doesn't have them. Mm-hmm. It's still a bit of a shock when you see a police officer, for me at least, with one on their hip. Pretty much they're not really around. And thought, I know what I'll take that little country at the bottom of the world. Some handguns. Now, can I just also say, even if they were legal, even if you were allowed them, what the fuck are you doing giving a handgun as a gift, a mock handgun as a gift? What are you trying to say other than, oh, by the way, speaking of red flags, all we care about is guns in this country. I've got something else I want to say on the back of it because I'm going to give him one piece of grace, which is he is dealing with the government who was okay with breaking the law anyway. So maybe he just went, I'm okay to give them something illegal. But your first thoughts, Paul?
Well, my first thoughts are, to be fair, if you're going to a foreign country as a dignitary and you want to give them something from your country that says this is from us, we might do something like give a taonga made of pounamu. They give guns because that's how American they are.
My gosh, it's shocking, isn't it? But as I said, I mean, if I was going to try and give him a little bit of grace, but I don't really feel like doing, but if I was going to, I might say he probably heard that this government is okay with breaking laws when they're trying to enforce laws. So we were singing this from the rooftops last year, that whether you agree or disagree with the idea about gang insignia in public, there is a human rights issue here. And that human rights issue is people have the right to present themselves in a way that works with maybe it's their culture, maybe it's their family. Freedom of expression is something we have here. So this has finally been tested, and the man's conviction for wearing a cap with gang insignia infringed on his human rights, court told. Now, this is not a conversation around whether you think gangs are good, bad, or indifferent. This is a conversation about the law. It's a little bit like the free speech conversation. We only need free speech to protect the worst speech. Because if we all say lovely things to each other, does it need to be protected? The only reason to protect speech is if it's speech that we hate and don't want to hear. So we can have this conversation around the laws that have been broken here without therefore going, oh, we support everything the gangs do. This is about the law. The High Court in Wellington has heard that a man's conviction for wearing gang insignia is an infringement on his human rights. Really? Nobody saw that coming. Mana Brown, 19, was prosecuted last year under the Gangs Act 2024 after being spotted on CCTV cameras in the Hutt Valley wearing a cap that included the word nomad. Counsel for Brown, Chris Nichols, told the court he did not dispute the conviction, but was seeking a declaration that the prohibition of gang insignia was inconsistent with the Bill of Rights Act and the government's international commitments to uphold human rights. Gang insignia law challenged. Nichols said Brown was a third generation of a family deeply tied to that gang. I understand that I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I'm saying maybe Kash Patel knew that this government broke the laws anyway. But the reality is this government is passing legislation that is illegal. That is deemed a breach of human rights. When you breach human rights, that is illegal. So, yeah, that's kind of the ridiculously tacit connection I'm putting in there between the two, but it was the point being made that I wanted to mention how we all saw this coming, but this government wanted to sell the idea of tough on crime, tough on the gangs, whilst gang numbers are going up and you're losing court cases based on your illegal laws. And I just thought, maybe it's time. You know, I don't like being one of those, I told you so people, but sometimes it might be appropriate for a few people out there to hear, yeah, we saw this coming. You know,
what you need to do though is a supercut, because coming into next year with the election, there are going to be a lot of people who suddenly have this blind spot of, what do you mean, you know, Kash Patel came in with guns? What do you mean that the government broke the law around freedom of speech? What do you mean pay wave surcharges led to the increase of costs of everything else? They're going to need reminding constantly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Oh, look at that. Gareth just ordered a t-shirt. My watch just told me. Good on you, Gareth. Very, very good, Peter. Cash converters. Hat tip. Yeah. We bow to you. Converting the guns, Mr. We bow to your comedic brilliance. Right, now we want to talk about local bodies. I don't have anything really on it because you're sort of the expert here. You had a bit of a chat with Debbie about it. I want to talk a little bit about, it's not going to be a big focus. I know there's going to be some people in chat going, oh, Pat likes to talk about American crap. I do want to talk about some American crap tonight, but for a short while. But before we do that, Paul, tell us things about local body elections. Where are we at?
So it depends where you live, actually, as to where we're at. So okay. We're in the middle of the return process. Everybody who is old enough to vote should have their voting forms by now. And if not, they need to reach out to their local council, check out their website to find out how they can cast a special vote, because everybody should vote. We've got some places like the Bay of Plenty, for example, that their numbers are well up on what we saw last election, which is amazing. We've got some places like Kirikiriroa Hamilton, where it's about the same as last time, maybe a little bit higher. and they had a record low turnout last time. So we want to drive those numbers up. And we've got some places which are falling well behind at the moment as well. They're mostly rural areas, and that might just be because rural delivery times take a while to get back to the office to be counted. So
Gotcha.
the main drive is to make sure people vote and get out there and have their say. It's really hard for anybody on an elected position to go, yeah, I've got a mandate when they're put in there by 30% of the population, is what it boils down to. And we've got some really shitty people running, who have a really dedicated follower base, and they will definitely go out and vote. But the more people who vote for other people, the less likely those shitty people are to get in. So the aim at the moment is just to drive up voter bases and make sure people feel confident in voting and finding the right candidates, which means doing a bit of research, which I know people don't like because those booklets are terrible that they send out if they've got everybody's information in it. So that's pretty much where we're at, trying to get people to vote.
There are several, I mean, you're one of these people, but there are several people, I always forget the name of the guy in Dunedin, who bring out like quite detailed write-ups of who the candidate, like beyond the booklet. And I guess there's things also to be aware of, you know, if it's pink, it's probably stink. It's an ACT Party candidate, perhaps. And obviously, Voices for Fuckwits, is that what they're called? Still called that?
Yeah, Voices for Fascism, something like that.
Who last election were like, keep it secret. They're out there now as well. Are there any particularly egregious candidates standing at the moment that you kind of go, if we were going to make a poster child for the worst possible candidate, it would be...
There's actually a couple. And again, it depends on where you are. If you were somewhere like Kaipara, up north, it would be Craig Jepson, who's the mayor at the moment. He's not seeking the job again as mayor, but he's seeking another job on council. He is incredibly anti-Māori with everything. He's down the rabbit hole when it comes to conspiracy theories. He is a part of Voices for Freedom as well. He signed a letter to the Prime Minister going, we should never enter a World Health Organization pandemic treaty because did you see how bad the pandemic was managed last time? A whole bunch of stuff there. If you're in anywhere really that's got a ticket, seems to be really bad at the moment as well. So you've got places like, I think it's Westward, which is out west in Tamaki. That's got a couple of Voices for Freedom members in there, including a regional coordinator. In the Waikato, you've got Better Hamilton and Better Waipa, and they're both organised by a Hamilton councillor called Andrew Bidder. He was the one that made headlines for calling one of the mayors the R word, an ableist slur. So he set up his own ticket, and they include a convicted serial fraud offender who won't apologize, in his own words, perversely proud of what he did, and Voices for Freedom's loudest locals. And a woman who came up and screamed at me in the street when I was visiting my parents a couple of weeks ago, where I bought that pillow, actually, and then told Andrea Vance and Charlie Mitchell, who wrote that story that came out in the Sunday Star Times, that everything that they're reporting on is my fault, which is absolutely weird. You've got Better Wellington and Independent together down in Pōneke. You've got Independent Citizens running in Dunedin. Christchurch. So yeah, like there's, if it's a crowd, is it Better for Waimak? Together for Waimak? That's a really bad one. That's got the guy who ran for New Zealand First, who made headlines for screaming about how they were going to bury Māori. He's running in that group. So there are some really horrible people out there running.
And the problem is, Whānau, I know you guys probably know this, but there's a difference between knowing it and then actioning it, is the reason that any of these people have a sniff, right, is that not enough people participate. Because even it depends where you're elected. If you got a list your candidates 1 to 6 or whatever it is, if you've got 8, 10, 12 councillors, you don't need very many votes to be number 12 or number 11 or number 10. And the only way to protect your local council to hopefully get the best qualified quality people, even if they're on the other side of the political spectrum from you, is to participate. The way to get the people who still think that we've all been microchipped because we got vaccinated, or that anyone who has a heart murmur, for the next 15 years is going to be because of the vaccine. The way to keep those people out is to participate. Participate, participate, participate. And one other
I
question.
liken it to a teaspoon of salt in water. You know, if you've put a teaspoon of salt into a shot glass, that's going to be really salty. But we know that there's a finite number of these people out there who support these more extreme groups. So if you were to take that teaspoon that's their dedicated group that are going to vote, and you put it into a bucket of water, your saltiness is obviously going to go down. You still got the same amount of salt, but it's overwhelmed by everything else. And by having more voters get out there and have their say, they're less likely to get somebody like that onto their councils. One
more question about this, because of course the documentary that you made, Fabricated Consent, going very well. Everyone should have watched that. But answer this question, and the answer to this question is going to be, how does this person find out? So if you have done it, how do you direct them to your stuff? Because they just want to know, any an Ashburton? So with the work you have done on the areas you have done, how can people then go check out what to look out for in their area?
So this is where it gets kind of confusing, because every area is different, and I'm one person and I haven't been able to clone myself yet. So I haven't been able to cover all the areas. If you go to my website, paultheotherone.com/LG25, local government 25, you'll find a list of all the councils on there, and everywhere that's got a video that I've done so far, there's stuff up there, for example. So what was that council that they just mentioned? Ashburton? Which council does that fall into?
Say again?
Which council was that came up on the comments?
Yeah, Ashburton.
Okay, so in Ashburton, for example, I've got one person on my list here. That is Dolph Van Amersfoort, who stood for the New Nation Party in the 2023 election. He posts anti-vaccine, homophobic and climate change denial content. He's now backing New Zealand First through the New Nation Party on his Facebook page. He's on Telegram. So there's little notes like that I've got that I use to feed in, that I'm hoping to get some graphics done up on. What's really fascinating about a lot of these candidates as well is their ties to New Zealand First. ACT, we know, are running candidates, and they're creepy, and they sit there talking about the war on cars. But New Zealand First has so many ties to these disinformation candidates. There was a big chunk of them that were actually at that New Zealand First annual conference 3 weeks ago, a month ago. Some of them have actually put forward policy points that have gone into be looked at in Parliament, go into the cookie tin in Parliament. So there's a really strong hold of those, which is not a surprise, but a really strong hold of those conspiracy theorist groups that are now latched onto New Zealand First. So New Zealand First is essentially running candidates without telling people that they're running candidates.
paultheotherone.com/LG25. So, for example, just to help me, because I'm a moron, if I wanted to look up Dunedin and I was on your site, tell me what to do.
All right. So if you scroll all the way down to that big panel of pages, a panel of logos, look out for the Dunedin one. It should be alphabetical. So it's the one right on the very end of the first row.
See, I live in Dunedin. I don't even know that, but it does come up across it. So it says, you can see Dunedin City Council.
So we click into that one. So it'll tell you what your voting method is, single transferable. So you tick a box. You don't have a Māori ward referendum there because Ngāi Tahu has different representation models that they want. So it's not like a racist thing. It's something that iwi themselves have described. You have this video here specifically on the red flag candidates. And you've got one of the biggest ones there with Pam Taylor, who is literally insane.
I did her. I did all the mayoralty candidates last time around. And I offered her a seat, and it turned to custard. And I don't know the correct way in 2025. You're supposed to say someone's mental or mad, but it's my honest held. It's my. I'll just say this perfectly. That's my honest held belief from my experiences with the person, rather than for legal reasons. That
is fair. I mean, her claims that she's made online include things like she's the spiritual leader and queen of the United States of Pamela. So there's some stuff there. And to be fair, this does also need to be updated, because I actually spoke to Cindy Elder specifically. She reached out because she ran for New Conservatives at the last general election, and she reached out and explained why. And we actually sat down and did an interview, which you can find on my YouTube page, because she does a great amount of work around housing initiatives, and she's got a really great plan to put in place for that. She was hoping New Conservatives would give her a bit of a platform to be able to push that. She shows up to the first meeting and they start talking about how abortions are bad and trans people don't exist, and she's just like, nah, I'm out, can't do this. So there's some really fascinating stuff that comes through with those candidates. Cindy is the only one of the candidates, though, who has shown up on any of my videos who has actually turned around and said, yeah, I take responsibility for what I did and what I said and how it might have impacted people. The rest of them tend not to.
This guy here, I don't know if he's running again. Richard Seeger.
Oh, Richard. No, Richard's not running again.
Okay.
Lee Vanderveer is definitely running again because
Lee Vanderveer comes across to me as just more of an ACT kind of candidate. But Richard Seeger, if you want to, the conversation I had with him was insane. He doesn't believe in like not just COVID. He doesn't believe in viruses. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's off his website. I don't know if it's still up or anything, but yeah. And there's something I can't even remember what it was. It might have been a trans issue that he was like he didn't want to talk about. And within 30 seconds, he had brought it up. Whatever that issue was, it was just insane, just insane. Anyway, listen, that's that none of that's relevant unless it's there's someone running there. Yeah, I guess Jules Radich is running.
Well, you had Lee
Vanderveer
running.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so maybe. A lot of people ask us if we do that again this time around. I'm just like a bit like you. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can only work so many hundreds of hours a week already.
I don't think I've gone to bed before 2 a.m. for the last 2 weeks because it's just putting everything together, and I want to make sure if I say something, I can back it up. Yeah. And so, if I say on screen, this is a person who got this wrong. This is why it's wrong. It needs to be there so that the voters can sit there and go, okay, cool. I've got that information. I can use that to make a decision. They don't have to agree with me at all. Yeah. They can sit there and go, okay, I see that information and I agree with their stance, and that's their choice. Ultimately, the goal is to get people to vote and hopefully have people feel a little bit more informed about who it is that they're voting for.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Huge thanks to people who have just bought some shirts and hoodies and stuff. There's a few in there. Well done. And we will try and get our very well looked after staff here, which is both me and my wife, to maybe get those ones pressed tomorrow and see if we can still get them in the post either by tomorrow afternoon or maybe Friday morning. We'll do our best. Okay, let's get to this last story. And it's an interesting one. Just before we do that, though, we just got to do this. Oi, wake up. There you go. Sit there. Stay. Stay. She's got a new trick. One of my kids taught her a trick that you point your finger at her and go bang. She rolls over on her back really slowly and puts her feet in the air. Like she's just
I thought you were about to say, she goes, yeah, welcome to the FBI Wellington branch.
Yeah. She's tagged. All right, let's get to this last story, shall we? Sorry, Nala. It's like an abusive relationship. I make her do tricks and stuff. I'm bringing up this guy to start off with because it kind of leads us back via New Zealand into the Charlie Kirk story. Whanganui Mayor regrets speaking at Charlie Kirk vigil after backlash. Whanganui Mayor Andrew Tripe says he regrets speaking at a candlelit vigil for American conservative Charlie Kirk following an outburst of criticism from the community. Tripe said he knew little about the assassinated activist's views. Yeah, good on you for putting your name on his vigil then, dude. Mm-hmm. When he spoke at Whanganui's Remembering Charlie Kirk vigil, but wanted to condemn political violence and support free speech. You just got to be careful, you don't put your name to anything unless you've got a bit of research.
Google it. It takes 2 minutes to Google who that person is. It's not like they were an unknown.
So when this all happened, when the Charlie Kirk assassination happened, and we've been very clear here about the words assassination, and the person was certainly had what you'd class left-leaning views, but he was non-affiliated with any political party. And look, if you want to see a brilliant piece on it, go to YouTube and look up Jon Stewart from The Daily Show this week. He's basically going, and days gone by, we wouldn't mention the name of the shooter, and he shows a whole bunch of stuff, out of respect for the people who have been shot. And now it's like out of people's mouths before you can even do it. And of course, he has several clips of, for example, Ted Cruz going, and they're calling us fascists, and that's the reason that there's this. And then, of course, Jon Stewart plays 3 clips of Ted Cruz calling Democrats fascists. So that's all bullshit. And I actually, it's a little bit like this government wants to blame international pressures partially for the economy now. The thing is, I actually want to agree with them. That does have an impact on this economy. But because they wouldn't let the last government talk about international pressures from COVID as part of the reason, then I'm sorry, you just don't get credit. It does feel a bit the same with this. Because after the Charlie Kirk assassination, the right wing, in America in particular, but certainly flow through the world, with one voice, the left are doing this. Why is the left committing this violence? Why is the left doing this? Even though all the research anywhere, any reputable place says 75% of political violence in America comes from the right. This is the narrative they sowed. So it does feel appropriate to kind of go, well, if that's the narrative you're sowing, then, and we know the stats for the last 20 years are 3/4 of the political violence has come from the right, then we're probably okay and pretty safe to put out a tweet quite soon after the Charlie Kirk shooting that says, out of interest, what happens to the current conversation around Charlie Kirk and shooters when the next 3 examples, because that would be 3 out of 4, that would be 75% of political violence in the US are committed by people on the right. Where does the conversation go now? And you notice, Paul, this tweet, this doesn't have much interactions.
No,
isn't it weird? Isn't it strange that this one hasn't set off Twitter like for example, my one at the top that's currently pinned around where the violence is. That's had a lot more engagement for some reason. So there was this horrific shooting in the weekend of a Mormon church, and it's really weird, but after Charlie Kirk, there's been all this conversation by those on the right talking about shooters and shooting and guns and the left, and they're really quiet about this one. And in fact, they're doing things like saying, Carolyn Levy and the White House have been saying things like, oh, we just have to wait. We have to see what's happening. And, we don't want to rush into things. Whereas Kash fucking Patel, within an hour of Charlie Kirk's assassination, was tweeting out who had done the crime when there was no evidence for it. But now we should really take our time. Now, the thing is, Paul, I agree with that. But it is strange that they have changed their perspective on this shooter. When you can argue, yes, Charlie Kirk was a much bigger name, but this person killed many more people. So this is a much more serious crime. And of course, what came out quite quickly after that was the affiliations with the shooter and Trump. Now, I'll say it again. I don't actually think political affiliations mean anything. But when the right is saying, even though all the evidence is contrary to this, when they are saying that the left is let's quote Elon Musk, the left is the party of murder, the left is the party of violence, people like Stephen Crowder and others, the left are hunting us, then it's appropriate to go, hang on, let's look at the stats. The very next significant shooting after this, this is his front yard, I think, off Google Street Views. This is a Trump sign attached to his fence. There is also conversations where, what is the thing that is said? There's a T-shirt that he's wearing out there that some people have said is not true, it's fake, which is fine. Happy to accept it. Here's his truck. Now, whilst the truck doesn't say, oh, g'day, got me some Trump, 2 Americans flags hanging out the back, could make for some, a case to be set. And then I don't often do this, Paul. I'd be interested to know if you do this in your research, but I use Google AI. So I did a search, right? And then I clicked on Google. Now you've got this AI mode. And this is what it said about Thomas Jacob Sanford, who's the shooter. He is the shooter too. There's no, because he's dead. News reports citing public records indicate that Thomas Jacob Sanford was not a registered member of any political party, but he had been linked to support for Donald Trump through social media and campaign sign displays at his home. Sanford was identified as the suspect in a September 2025 shooting and a fire. Of course, he set the place on fire as well. At the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, etc. Campaign sign, a Google Street View image from June 2025 shows a Trump-Vance sign on the fence. Social media post. In 2019, Facebook photo, Sanford seen wearing a T-shirt with the slogan, Trump 2020, make liberals cry. Some people are questioning that. So let's just put that one to the side, right? Fair enough. Petitions. This is interesting. A political consultant reported that Sanford signed petitions for conservative causes, including efforts to repeal the Michigan governor's pandemic emergency powers and to restrict abortions. Red flags? Red flags, Paul? Red flags?
A few. Yeah.
A few. Records show Sanford did not vote in any presidential primary elections, which would have revealed his party affiliation in Michigan. This suggests he was not strongly a committed partisan. So, like the guy who allegedly shot Charlie Kirk, not necessarily affiliated with a party, but certainly seems like there are some right-wing views there. And I think it's important for us, and in New Zealand, maybe you don't get it, but I think probably me and Paul do online and stuff, these sorts of accusations, that we at least have the information to, if we want to, push back on these narratives. But that's the thing I wanted to say tonight, Paul, and I've been talking for 7 minutes. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
To be fair, I haven't had a chance to look too much into that exact shooting. They do kind of blur a little bit when you're looking at news about shootings in the States en masse, and that is horrible and absolutely tragic, and doesn't seem to matter who's in power when they happen. The response is usually, thoughts and prayers. That's going to save everything, and we'll deal with mental health, but not fund it, and we should wait and see. And they're not inappropriate responses in the short term, but when you do it over and over for a very, very long time, they lose any sense of power.
But they've stopped doing that. This thing with Charlie Kirk has very much stopped that. The Charlie Kirk thing has turned into we're going to blame you. And just to echo what you're saying, this is a news story from what's just happened over the weekend. 9 people dead, scores injured over the weekend of mass US shootings, 6 separate mass shootings, bringing the total tally to, ready for this, 324 mass shootings this year. Underscoring, continuing. Yeah, it's more than one a day. So, we know there was one on the same day as Charlie Kirk, but we know nothing about that person, and they didn't get their flagpoles. Neither did the Democratic representative from the month before. So I saw a graph the other day actually that started talking about, it was, one of these things, like I see NBA stuff. It's like, who's the highest point scorer from the NBA since it started? And you have these lines that move, and then they move above each other. And then finally Michael Jordan takes over, and then LeBron takes over and does that kind of thing. I saw one, and I don't know, I'm not citing this as evidence. I need to check it first. But basically the UK had the most mass shootings according to this graph up until like the 1970s, early 1970s. And then the US took over per year. Then the US took over. And then when it actually wasn't that, it was different, but not that big. And then it got to about 2000, which is ironically when the assault weapon ban was lifted, and it went, and it just took off. Now, I'm not putting that out there as absolute evidence, but I would not be surprised. My bullshit nerve does not go off with that one, put it that way.
Yeah, well, the only thing that would actually surprise me about that is the UK. I don't know much about the UK's mass shootings, to be honest. It's not something that I've heard much of, because it gets so overshadowed by what happens in the US every day.
Yep, I'll try and find it. I'll put it on the thing. But anyway, it's just look, on lots of levels, I know people are going to go, well, if you think that it's okay not to pigeonhole people like this, why are we talking about it? And the reason is people need to understand what's also coming at us and have the information at hand for rebuttal as well, if you're going to get into this. And also, truth matters. And the truth is, the narrative being sold after Charlie Kirk is wrong. And if we're basing things off a wrong foundation and not the truth, we're not going to find the answers to these problems. We're just not. Another point that John Stewart made was, every country in the world has these conversations. I mean, we have these conversations in New Zealand. The right, I am sick and tired of saying the left call the right fascists all the time. What do you think's going to happen? Yeah, the right call the left pedos all the time. What do you fucking think that's going to do to an unhinged person if they think someone's an actual pedophile? But the thing is, these conversations happen, and these horrible conversations happen in every country, but there's only one country that sees this kind of violence, and it's the US. And that's one of the points he was making. Hey, Nala, you all right? Everything okay? All right. Hey, Paul, it's been fun, man. Like having you on.
It has.
Is there anything you want to share with the whānau to wrap up? Anything you want to go
Just
out with?
vote.
Anything you want to?
That's the big message for me from now for the next 2 weeks. Please fucking vote. And if you need to reach out to me and go, I don't know who I can't trust in my neighborhood, please feel free to do that as well. You can flick me a message on the Facebook page, or you can flick me a message through the website. I'll get to it eventually. I've got a list here of 220 odd people. So I'm sure I'm going to be able to find somebody that you don't want to vote for. And I will do my best to suggest some good people, but to be fair, I'm not as up to speed on them as I could be.
Have you done the reverse in your have you, like, for yourself, found who the good candidates would be there for?
For some places, like for where I am, I'm actually really lucky that I've got one council candidate who I think is absolutely amazing. So well respected in the community across the political spectrum. People love how much mahi he does and how much he supports the community. There are some places where I've looked into it going, I wouldn't vote for any of them. Personally, and I do have to also recognize my own bias. Like, I know I lean to the left. If I'm looking for something in the middle of the King Country, I know I'm not looking at a whole bunch of left-leaning people there. So it is a case of who are the more extreme and who are the ones that I could tolerate. But there are some good candidates around the place, and I do have those again on the YouTube page. There's some interviews that I've done with candidates from all over the country. There's Cindy was one of them, actually, the one that I spoke to in Dunedin. There's people like Sarah Templeton, who's running for Mayor of Christchurch, Lou Hutt, who's running for council in Hamilton, Dr. Will Flavel, who's running out west for one of the community boards. Tori, I think, was one of them on there as well. So yeah, there are some good candidates where we sit down, we do long form chats about what their vision actually is, because that to me is the big difference. When you're talking to a right wing candidate who's all there wrapped up in conspiracies and anger, it's about potholes and speed bumps and short term cosmetic stuff. And when you're talking to a left leaning candidate, it tends to be more about long term thinking and the vision for the place that they call home. And so that is a really tough thing for people to decide, because you might sit there going, oh, my city has so much debt and the rates have gone up, I need a fiscally conservative person. Or you might sit there going, what's the potential that we can unlock? So yeah, it's not an easy job sometimes.
And just to wrap up, because there's still chats going on, I'm not sure of the conversation that's happening right now, but just to respond to this one from Kiwi, I agree, he's speaking to Guru, but Pat seems very quick to speculate it's right-wing political violence. Well, I think what we've just done is demonstrated in this one example how, what the hell is that dog doing? What actually it is looking like and leading to. And I'm not speculating that the research is clear that 75% of American political violence comes from the right. That's not a speculation. So I don't know, Paul, you're a better researcher than me. I don't think I speculated anything in there. I think we laid out a case for the Michigan one.
We go back to your Twitter page for a second.
Okay, I can do that. I have sort of closed. Yeah, keep padding. This is smooth.
So because as you said, you've got this pinned post on Twitter. I'm never going to get used to calling it X. But that's got verified information from research places. That was the sources ADL.
Yeah. Now listen. Don't have this argument with us, because I had this online for this one. People saying, but it's the ADL. You guys hate the ADL. I mean, the ADL. I'm not really agree with the ADL on things around Israel. Sure. But research is research. But anyway, I then spent half hour and I found about 8-10 other reputable sources that say between 70 and 80% is carried out. So if you don't like the ADL, if you don't want to use the ADL, there's plenty of other sources. In fact, I might even have some in here, because one of the people was having a crack. I was like, well, how about this one? Well, how about this one? Oh, there we go. Reference, please. There's ADL there. And I wonder if it was this one. Cherry picking there, says that. Cherry picking the words. No, that's not it. Anyway, look, I'm not going to do it again because I've done it. And then I went through and said, there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one. And yeah. So
it's even our own research in this country highlights the same thing. If you look at the report that comes out of the NZSIS every year, it will tell you our worst crimes tend to be done by people on the right. It's going to be very hard to top the worst crime ever committed in this country towards anybody else, and that was definitely a right-wing extremist. We don't have the tools in place at the moment for those people to make those stats worse. But we also know that identity extremism is the most likely cause for another terrorist attack in this country. And that tends to be an issue that the right focuses on more than the left.
Yeah. All right, dude, let's leave it there. People are going to this conversation is going to go on for the next hour in the chat. You guys can
You're going to
keep
be
doing
sitting
it.
in the corner going, I need a drink. Does Winnie know where the liquor cabinet is?
Now, there was a very I recorded Craig Rennie this afternoon, and we have done a podcast with Craig, and he was talking about what was it called? The electricity sector and what the government is rejecting and taking on board from recommendations at the moment. He told me something else really interesting. 2024-25 financial statements of government of New Zealand embargoed release for media and analysts. Obviously, I can't therefore read it. So there is a release coming out in the next couple of days that for the past 35 years has had a lockup, like the budget does, like other, like preview does, all those sorts of things. Well, the Treasury has decided that they're not going to do a lockup for the release of these financial statements, first time in 30 plus years. And then what's going to happen is the Minister of Finance is going to do an interview. So in other words, so the analysts won't get their hands on this financial document early. And I said to Craig, well, but it'll just be 2 hours later. And he went, yeah, but then the Minister of Finance is going to have a stand up and analysts can't come to it. It's just the journalists. So of course, no one's seen it. There's no analysts there to ask the questions, and the journalists are going to be put in a position to perhaps just selling the government narrative. This decision was made 2 weeks ago. It takes 3 weeks to print the document. So the decision was made after the document was started, so they knew what was going to be in it, and they've cancelled, for the first time in 30 plus years, they've cancelled the lockup. So Craig's going to come on tomorrow night, and we're going to have a chat about, you right there, mate? You okay? Do you want to go? You can go. Yeah, you can go. She does that to me every night. She looks at me. She hears a noise and goes, "Can I go? Can I go?" So anyway, so Craig's going to come on tomorrow night and kind of explain that to us, and probably talk about the electricity sector as well. Yeah, and that's about it, actually. So I think it's time for us to go.
We've had a nice evening of socially educating people. It's great.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, team. Let's do some of the credits, shall we? The old outros.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily either this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Tomorrow night, the last of our guest hosts, Tommy D, is going to be joining us from Twitter. Twitter, from TikTok. Young people don't use Twitter. TikTok.
He's going to be amazing. He is so on to it.
Yep, he'll be joining us tomorrow night. And again, huge thanks to you, Paul. And we obviously still want to stay in touch within the next week, because we want to keep talking about local body election. And as you said, vote, vote, vote. So thanks, dude.
And we'll talk straight after we finish.
There you go. And we will talk to you soon, eh? All right, Paul. We'll catch you, Paul. All right, whānau. Hooroo.
Deal.